in the Horace Daly, who is having some illusions. Let me just set your mind at ease. There is only one way to get back here, and that is to cross over. So if you can't cross over, don't do it. Minister of State in the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, the main members of Parliament who may be here, permanent secretaries, and mayors, yes, we have a few mayors here. Permanent secretaries, heads of agencies, and representatives of public sector and private sector bodies who are here. Resident representative of UNICEF Jamaica, Miss Mariko Kagoshima. Did I get it right? Kagoshima. Reverend Courtney Gordon, thank you for those prayers that you have sent out. I agree with Oliver, they will be answered. Partnering representatives of private sector and non-governmental organizations, members of the security forces, volunteers and students, representatives of the media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning. I'm pleased that the program to commemorate Labor Day and National Workers' Week 2019 is focused on the safety and security of our children. As Prime Minister, I have on many occasions lamented the mayhem constantly wreaked on our children, whether as victims of child abuse in all its ugly forms, or as a consequence to wanton disregard for road safety for our users. Indeed, in the area of road safety, over 120 children have died on our roads in the past 5 years, and another significant number suffer life-changing injuries as a result of over 70,000 traffic accidents, including within 100 meters of school zones over the past decade. This is unacceptable for a country that consistently says how we love our children. Further, this is all happening at a time when the nation and the world celebrates the 30th anniversary of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, created in 1989. Among the declarations set out in the preamble of the convention is the assertion that the child, by reason of his, and we have to put in her as well, physical and mental immaturity, needs special safeguards and care, including appropriate legal protection before as well as after birth. In the context of countries such as Jamaica, this signals the need to ensure in every action, program, and activity devised and implemented in the country that the well-being, emotional, educational, cultural, economic, and spiritual well-being of our children be given due regard and respect. This must be taken to the extent where we judge our progress by the extent to which we as a nation are able to demonstrate our commitment to the well-being of our children. So under the theme, child safety, it's you, it's me, it's all of we. The program for Labor Day and Workers' Week 2019 invites all Jamaicans to volunteer our services, talents, and abilities in support of the well-being of our children. The safety and security of our children must again be everyone's business. Many of us grew up on the African adage that it takes a community or a village to raise a child, effectively declaring the need for all of us to come together to safeguard the future of our children as the basis of national development. After all, the most profound definition of sustainable development is the creation of mechanisms today that will benefit our children tomorrow. The focus on road safety allows us to treat with situations that are, in most cases, avoidable. The National Road Safety Council and the Constabulary Force have been adamant in their determination to reduce the number of road accidents and resulting fatalities through targeted public education. And I believe I speak on behalf of all Jamaicans, all well-thinking Jamaicans, that we totally deplore, decry the indiscipline on our roads. We decry the unnecessary, aggressive, and offensive behavior of some of our drivers on our local thoroughfares. And we are horrified that very often the safety of road users take a backseat to getting the next passenger or getting to where I want to go. More and more, whenever I interact with citizens and we hear the complaints, because, when I do get a chance to interact, aside from listening to the polls, the best poll, Horace, is what people tell you. And you'll have conversations and people will say, roads, of course, of late, water. In fact, more so water is now at the top of the list of issues affecting citizens. You will hear crime. But more and more persons are saying to me, Prime Minister, you have to do something about the behavior of drivers on the road. And it's not just taxi men, even though they are pointed out more often than not. But generally, there is a level of indiscipline on the road. So yes, there are difficulties with our traffic management system. There are difficulties with our roads. There are difficulties with sometimes the design and construction of our roads. And those all account for and contribute to road fatalities. But in the post-mortem of most accidents, you will find the whole issue of driver error, driver judgment, and driver indisciplined behavior. It is not something that the traffic department or the new PSEB, the Public Safety and Traffic Enforcement Branch, alone can address. In fact, the recent figures I have gotten, the police tell me that they have issued in excess of 400,000 tickets. So it is not totally a problem of enforcement. They are enforcing. The issue now is whether or not the enforcement brings consequences through the legal justice system, and whether or not drivers themselves take the issuance of a ticket seriously enough to modify their own behavior on the road. We meet monthly or frequently, the National Road Safety Council, and I do get a report on the deaths that have occurred. And it is disturbing. It is very disturbing, particularly, and forgive me, Minister Grange, for using your platform of Workers' Week and Labor Day to raise this issue. But the fatalities resulting from motorcycles, motorbikes, it is disturbing. And many of those who are dying are young adults just leaving the legally defined age of a child. So, since I have this platform, I want to make an appeal for sanity and good judgment to be exercised on our road. If you can't do it for yourself, do it for your children. Do it for my children. Do it for your children. Do it for our children. So, Minister, let me return to my script. I want to acknowledge the work of the National Road Safety Council, Jane Foundation, the FIA Foundation, and Albertus Foundation, and UNICEF. In fact, it was Mariko, I understand, who approached Minister Grange to have the focus on children in Labor Day. We want to thank you for providing us with that stimulus to have it done. But road safety is not the only issue of security for our children. It is of great concern to me, as it is, I'm sure, to the entire nation, that our children are being abused, brutalized, and murdered. We are still horrified at the brutal murder of 11-year-old Trisha Morris of Woodland District in Hanover, and 8-year-old Shanta Skiles of Sterling Castle, Red Hills, St. Andrew. Both girls were on their way home from school. Both were reported missing, and both were later found dead. Inevitably, in cases like these, it's not strangers. It's not, a freak accident. Inevitably, in cases like these, it amounts to persons who they know from the community, the very community that is supposed to be raising the child. So again, it is a reflection on the community. It is a reflection on the entire society, that within our midst, there are those who would prey on our children. And there are those who would use excuses, whether it is cultural or traditional, to say, well, this is how I have grown up, and some of the excuses you hear are ridiculous. But there is an ambivalence in the society as to whether or not we take a firm stance against some of the ridiculous things. I don't want to go into the details here, but all Jamaicans know what I'm talking about. That, somehow young girls have cure for all kinds of ills, that some of our men hold this in their minds. We have an ambivalence in the society that it is okay to touch women, young girls, without their consent. And some believe that children can consent. And some believe, and even some parents encourage, that for financial reasons, it is okay. They see their children engaging in relationships with older men, and they say nothing. They tacitly agree to it. And the community sometimes knows and does nothing. I want to make it absolutely clear, standing at this podium today, that the Jamaican government does not tolerate this. We don't support this. And with our partner UNICEF here, I wish to give the full assurance that our security forces, our total law enforcement effort, will do everything in our powers to ensure that those who commit these heinous crimes are brought to justice. That every case that is brought to our attention of abuse will be thoroughly investigated, and those who are accountable will be brought to book. The government of Jamaica in no way subscribes to or is ambivalent about the socio-cultural issues that still continue to support the basis on which some of our men in particular rely on to abuse our children. These things must be wiped away from our culture. So again, Minister, forgive me for departing from the main focus, but I get very emotional about this. So we want to put this in context. The Child Development Agency points out that on average, 10 out of every 1,000 children are the subject of child abuse or maltreatment. 79% of children witness violence in their communities or home. That's a very high number. And 68 out of every 100,000 Jamaican children are victims of violent crimes. And that is extremely high. Our children deserve better, and they need to know that they are protected and that we have their backs at all times. As a nation, we must actively condemn such heinous acts against our children, and my heart goes out to the parents and families of both girls, even as I call upon all Jamaicans to act decisively against these criminals and to work with law enforcement. Let me repeat that point. To work with law enforcement, not to take the law into your own hands, but to work with law enforcement to ensure that those who commit such horrible acts against the most vulnerable of our citizens are brought to account under the law. So, our work on Labor Day must take into consideration many elements of child safety and security, including the physical environment. So, we can now look at brightening some of those pedestrian crossings. We can look at repairing sidewalks. We can assist with projects that are going to make the approaches to schools safer. But I want you to also consider that a part of the safety and security and the emotional and psychosocial development of the child is their ability to play. And so for Labor Day, I know you didn't mention these projects, Minister, but I'm just throwing this out there. Maybe we can find some funds to support it. communities should look at the various open spaces or parks that are available. And through that community effort, see how we can have them restored. Play is a very important part of the development of the child. And it teaches so much. We take play for granted. You know, we've said there's no value in play. But there is, you know, I think, you know, the teacher in me is coming back up now. But there's so much value in play. It teaches, you know, good sportsmanship. It teaches how to resolve conflicts. It helps with the physical development of the child. It gives confidence. And yes, children have stress as well. And it is an excellent way to reduce stress, both for parents and for children. So I want to, this Labor Day, encourage communities, villages, to come out and look at those green spaces, those open spaces, see how they can be debushed. You know, there's nothing wrong with tie and rope swings. You don't have to have those up-to-date play sets. You know, we didn't have those ours. Tie and rope, make good swings, and jungle gyms and so forth. We improvise, but let's get our children out there playing, and it's good for their health. Totally, it's good for their health. So Labor Day, let's focus on that as well. You know, Horace mentioned the hard-won rights of our workers and the apparent threats that exist today that could appear to be reversing some of those rights. I think we are, after 100 years, in a different era of labor development. And I think that generally that should be acknowledged and embraced. There are developments that are happening within our society that will radically transform what we view as work. So the concept of work is changing. And I believe that our unions have been very progressive in their outlook on the changes that are happening in our society. But underlying all of that is our economy is also improving. And today we can say that we have the highest level of employment in the history of the record of the statistics. And conversely, the lowest level of unemployment in the recorded history of the statistics. And that is a good thing for labor. For this to continue, for Jamaica to progress towards having full employment, meaning full utilization of all the labor that wants to participate in the workforce, we must ensure that our businesses can grow, have confidence to employ. But at the same time, we must ensure that our workers are satisfied in their employment and that labor is properly rewarded. I think that over the last 30 years, our unions have been, as I've said before, very progressive. And we have managed to create a social consensus around these issues, and we have developed a mechanism for resolving conflicts. We should always seek to utilize that mechanism. Always seek to utilize that mechanism, because any action outside of that could easily destabilize the very tenuous and fragile recovery of our economy. Let me put it another way. Without the recovery of the economy, securing rights within the context of economic collapse could never be even contemplated in a significant way. We need to ensure that above all else, we protect the recovery of the economy. And I want to repeat that point. This government stands fully behind a consensual approach. And I know the same for Horace and the opposition as well. It is something that has served us well. I also want to repeat that point within the context of everything that is happening within the country today and in the past, that we must protect the fragile economic recovery. And of course, the government makes the commitment that as the economy gets stronger and more robust, the rights of the workers who have sacrificed in order to have the recovery, that their rights will also be protected. So I think they would say that a word to the wise is sufficient. So with those remarks, I've detained you long enough. It is my great pleasure to launch the Labor Day and National Workers' Week activities, and again, make the national appeal. This Labor Day, come out as a village and do what is necessary to ensure that our roads are safe for our children, but also to ensure that our children are able to have facilities for play and socialization within your communities. And generally, not just for children, but for everyone, come out and let's build a Jamaica that we can all be proud of. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.